It is my fault.
I was actually here right at 11.
Yeah, you were.
I was on the money.
It just took me a little bit too long to get set up for today's show, and we were actually you were seeing how the sausage got made, which we can talk about here maybe in just a little bit. So, hello and welcome to Court of the Rings here on twitch.tv/Lotr stream, youtube.com/Lord of the Rings/live, and facebook.com/Lotro. I am Lotro's community manager, Cordovan. And with me here today is a special guest, Bloodborne,
hey,
all
everybody.
the way from the fine area of Mordor? Where do you live?
Might as well be. Cincinnati.
Okay, Cincinnati. Yeah. And here taking a tour of the office, stopping by, going to be meeting a little bit with some of our devs and such throughout the day. Was able to really make it work on his schedule in terms of being able to swing by the office. And since he is such a long-standing and important member of our Lotro stream community, we were happy to have him hosted here today. Might be doing a little bit of live streaming later, but we also have a lot to talk about. Why? Because we got a lot going on. I tell you, sometimes it feels like doing Lotro-related news things is a bit of a drought and then a flood. And a lot of that, I think, is partially because of the realities of the development cycle in terms of how things get ready to go. But we launched our first preview of Update 22.2 on Bull Roarer this week, and I believe it gets shut off this evening, and then we'll be back hopefully next week as well. But oh man, do we got a lot of things in this week's Bull Roarer. The very first batch of class updates is now available for preview on the Bull Roarer client. We also do have the full list of changes on the forums, but we sure would appreciate if you'd actually go in client and take a look at things if you could. Before we get going too much, though, like I say, you've been doing this longer than I have on Lotro stream, so it kind of seems weird to introduce you, but just in case there are people who only tune into Court of the Rings,
Sure.
why don't we introduce you to the fine folks here?
Sure. My name is Bloodborne. I have been playing the game. If you guys watch the other streams at all or anything like that, there's a spiel I usually give, and it's that I've been playing the game for over 10 years and I've been broadcasting it for over almost 5 on Twitch. Helped kind of get the whole streaming thing going for Lord of the Rings Online. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the gist of it, and it's really cool to be out here, honestly, just having been in this community for as long as I have, and glad we were able to make it happen.
And let's promote your channel here. So, twitch.tv/Bloodborne. And you stream Lotro, in addition to some other games as well, but a lot of Lotro on your channel.
Yeah, it's about 95% Lotro. Usually the only other time is if people are just feeling like they want to play something else for a little bit and might catch the end of a stream or something like that. But yeah, it's pretty much, if you go to that channel and you keep on scrolling back, you're going to see a lot of Lord of the Rings Online.
And on Lotro stream, every Sunday night, starting at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, you do, I guess we could call it kind of a talk-style format show. You also do game streaming and things like that. But
yeah,
you do a lot of the kind of news and analysis and get crunchy, as it were.
Yeah, well, sometimes we do the talk show style. It's kind of evolved away from that a little bit more to where it's been a lot more gameplay. Like I'll typically pick a class that I don't play a lot. So, because I know there's typically more people that love to poke on Twitch, as far as watching me play, watching me be uncomfortable, as it were, playing classes that I don't normally get an opportunity to play or something like that. So, yeah. Yes, Meg, accept his LM. Yes.
And how long have you been playing Lotro?
I started in November of 2007. So fairly early on, but I missed that 11-year cutoff by a couple months.
Nice. Nice. All right, well, that's great. Hopefully we can help get some people to your channel, although, like I say, you've been doing it longer than I have, so most people know who you are at this point, but for the few who do not. I am also not seeing any comments on YouTube, so let me double-check to make sure that we are actually live on YouTube here. Sorry if I get a double... Yeah, okay. We're good. We just... check. Test. So today I thought what we would do is maybe do a bit of questing, but I think really today, just because of the sheer amount of news that we dropped this week, we'll probably do a lot of class talk. We'll do our best to answer your questions on this, get your feedback on it, and really just kind of get a little bit crunchy. I'm thinking later this afternoon, if time permits, we're going to do a little bit more, I guess, traditional live streaming as well, where we can go in-game and get some of that done. I'm not sure how much of that we're going to be able to get done in this 1 hour here, but we have things going on today. So you did take a look at the studio a bit, and we kind of had to split that into 2 parts because we ran out of time here this morning. But you got to see some of the sausage being made in terms of how an instance looks when it's in the development area, and see all the weird squiggly red lines, as it were.
Yeah.
Talk to our art director.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see it from that side. We always get to see the finished product and some the beta product on Bull Roar, but seeing it from that side is definitely interesting to see what all goes into it to give us that finished product.
And you'll be doing stuff like chatting with Sev, I believe, after lunch here today. I would imagine we're going to be able to get some of that sort of thing done. And I think we even have, today's like some kind of weird taco day. I think at 4 o'clock we've got a little social event happening here. But I think we're going to go out to lunch actually before that even, and get some chicken and waffles.
Yes, what you already discussed. I'm eating all the chicken.
Nice.
Yes.
Let me just kind of resize things a bit. All right, so we are here to talk about classwork in particular. We have got a lot of classwork happening here. Like I say, we launched this 2 days ago. Hunters, Guardians, Champion, Warden, Minstrel, and Lore Masters are all getting an initial phase of work here for Update 22.2. For those who are like, well, what about Bjorning? What about, Burglar? That will be coming, but as we had said, we're doing this stuff in waves, right? So rather than this will be the Burglar Pass, and we're going to do everything we ever need to do with the Burglar, and then we're calling it done and moving on to the next one. We're doing something a little bit different this time. And what we're going to be doing is targeting kind of in blasts, a large number of classes, a handful of changes, in some cases more changes than others, and then do that wave after wave after wave in the coming updates as time permits and as we can, until we get everyone in hopefully a better place than where we are today. So if you have a particular class here that you like, you should go and take a look at some of these changes. We will also talk a little bit about some of the general changes that are happening in Update 22.2 here in a bit too. But I thought it would be worth kind of starting off by talking a little bit about this classwork here. And I know that you are a champion player.
Yes.
So why don't we start with champion, huh?
Sure.
All right. So one of the first things that we're doing here is increasing skill damage across the board. That really just has to do with improving their overall DPS output. And then we're largely, it seems like, focusing on the blue line here with champions in this first iteration.
Yeah, that's one of the things that just jumped out right away, obviously, is that first line where it's just, the skill damage is being increased across the board. So jumping in and just doing a copy of my live character over to Bull Roar and seeing something like, I was really curious to see how that would affect the red line, because red line's kind of been a little underwhelming, pretty much basically because there's so much utility and power in yellow that when you couple that with some of those skills and traits that you can get in red, yellow is just really powerful. But even comparatively to other classes, it's still down a little bit on the damage side. But I wanted to see what that looked like, and even doing something like Remorseless Strike, which was typically on the top end, would get me maybe a 75k hit, was actually doing about 110.
Okay.
So it was a pretty substantial jump just in that. No other changes, just switching over to my red line build and then hitting the training dummy and seeing what it was going to do.
we should also mention that one of the things when you were looking around the office is you didn't get to see all the systems designers because they were locked away in a meeting going through these threads and this feedback. I guess that, does show that, yes, we are reading your feedback on this.
Right.
And we are absolutely intending to do what we can in terms of iterating on this feedback in the coming weeks before we release update 22.2. Now, it's going to be a balancing act between, because you could theoretically continue to iterate and iterate for the next 6 months to a year, right? But at some point here, we want to get this stuff out. So we're going to be taking a look at your feedback from Bull Roar, both for immediate changes and longer-term changes that we might make here on this classwork as it goes. But we are going to be iterating at least somewhat on this, and hopefully you'll see a second iteration on Bull Roar before we go live on this as well. I would also kind of mention that we had a question in chat. Why did we not look at Redline? It really is not a qualitative judgment so much as it is a quantitative judgment. We know how much work we can get done for update 22.2, and we had to try to pick specific targets. In some cases, those targets were picked because they were complementary to other systems work that was being done for a class. In some cases, it was because, frankly, that trait line in particular was maybe the weakest, or we felt that it needed the most work or had one of the most pressing issues with it. In some cases, it was probably because it's, and sometimes, better to do 12 smaller changes than one big one in terms of the use of your time.
Sure.
So there's a whole bunch of factors that really went into the why on that. But I would not say when you look at this, for example, on Champion, why didn't we work on the red line? That's not to say we feel Redline is in a good place necessarily, nor that we're not going to do further work on it. It's just for this initial wave, we're focusing largely on the blue line and then a little bit of the yellow line as well.
Yeah, and specifically with blue line, I mean, that's it's always been an interesting thing as far back before the trait trees were even brought out, when we didn't have the ability to have the shield anymore. But before we got the block rating from the two-handed swords, that was a very awkward phase for blue line. And I will say, I mean, it's in a, before this update even, it was in a better spot because of getting block. I mean, you could, I've even tanked a few tier 2 challenge things back in Pelennor. I haven't done as much in newer stuff, but it was in a better spot. Yeah. But it's nice to see these changes starting to come down. Yeah, and I think a lot of these, like the bubbles being converted to percentages, I think are a huge benefit, because anytime you have a flat number, the way that our morale scales in the game now, you know, you're getting players that are, you know, around up in 200K.
Yeah.
You know, those flat numbers just don't equate to being useful, so you end up having throwaway skills that just you don't use.
From a systems perspective too, it can often be easier to deal with scaling on a percentage basis rather than a hard number basis.
Sure.
So I think that may be part of that as well. So some blue line traits have been rearranged in the tree as well to address balancing issues. Largely this is moving things down a row, with the exception of tactical mitigation, which is being increased from row 1 to row 3. Maybe not the most popular change, but we'll see about that. And then on the yellow line, the blade wall's inherent damage is being increased dramatically.
It has been.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's sure some nice 90K hits with blade wall.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. So I guess overall, what do you see, if you can speak off the top of your head on this, that we should do next on Champion?
For Champion, bring back the shield.
Yeah, we had someone in chat just say that as well.
I know.
Yeah.
I threw away my collection of shields because I couldn't use them. I couldn't even put them on. Yeah, no, that would be cool, but I get it. No, as far as the champ goes, I think part of the issue with blue line still too is the fluidity of the skill usage. Yeah. It still feels very kind of clunky, and you know, I think it's good that they brought the damage up across the board for all of it, because that does affect how a blue line champion will generate threat.
Yeah.
Because as most of you guys know, and probably some of you don't know, is that the way the threat works is that you have a 3x damage multiplier. So, you know, if you pair up against, say, we'll say a hunter doing 1,000 damage and a champion doing 1,000 damage, but that champion is in blue line, well, that's 3,000 damage worth of threat then. So having the damage come up in blue line is going to make them a little bit more of an effective tank in situations, just because they'll be able to generate more threat off the damage they're doing. So that helps. There's still some stuff, and there's probably a lot more people out in the champion community that would probably be able to show the linking of skills a little bit better, because I'm like a year and a half removed from doing like any type of blue line tanking. Now I just go out into the Edinmores with blue line and have fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Off-topic questions that I see come up: is the anonymous bug in the social panel getting fixed? Specifically, there's an issue on Bull Roarer where being anonymous on the social panel is not making you anonymous on the Bull Roarer client. Yes, that is absolutely something we'll be working to fix. That is not impacting the live client, but is a Bull Roarer specific issue that we're going to have to take care of. Wobbin asks, any plans to increase monster difficulty in the world? I would say a comprehensive, like, yes, all monsters are now tougher is unlikely. There may be some targeted changes we could make. You want it tougher. We often more hear, say, Mordor in Update 22 to maybe perhaps make it a little easier. But I would say no to that in terms of a comprehensive monster difficulty increase in the world. But if there are some areas where we need to do targeted increases, I would imagine a lot of that kind of analysis might be done as we wrap up a lot of this classwork, because we're really going to be changing a lot of the way classes play here over the coming months. And so rather than trying to tweak something like, say, monster difficulty now, it would make a lot more sense to do the classwork first and then see where we end up. All right, let me try to move. Looks like it's going to be a little challenging to get this this web page thing working consistently. Doesn't like the back arrow. If I can't... Oh, God dang it.
I did see a comment in there that the red line champion was damage over time, and it has some intrinsic bleeds on it, and some it's kind of about middle of the way down the tree where you're getting deadly strikes and things like that. I mean, that's really been more of a burst situation, really big hits, and kind of sustained was the idea behind that. And something that I would say probably, as far as effectiveness between the lines and the champion, would be that, you know, red should be your and I tweeted this out, like, red should be your primo DPS, as far as like whatever your primary responsibility is, that should be what you're best at. So like the red line should be top of the damage line, and the yellow, you know, we traditionally look at yellow lines as kind of more of a utility build in a lot of cases, not 100% of the time, but if you look at yellow, you should probably be trading off some of your damage to be able to hit multiple targets. That's how it really was for a long time. Is like, well, we've got to kill a lot of mobs at one time, so let's go into our yellow spec or AoE spec or whatever had you at that time. Red was always really sustained bigger numbers. You used to burn through a lot of power in red, but that was kind of the trade-off.
Yeah, Gondor Zilla says, yeah, but red is most useful on boss solo. When we're doing this, that raises a good question, which is that when we're doing this classwork, to the extent possible, we are not targeting a specific trend or piece of content as much as we are trying to improve the class throughout the breadth. The unfortunate situation you get into, and we saw that, I remember with Throne of the Dread Terror, right? There were certain maybe Runekeeper abilities that were super powerful in there. But we're not going to necessarily change the entire class just because of that one specific outlier in terms of damage for the raid. So I do think there are times where we may need to do that targeted change, but specifically for this classwork, we're trying to be a little more holistic rather than specifically targeting the current content, because we would like this to have some impact, long term here.
Yeah, and I think you guys have made it a good point that approaching it from a single class, like way back, any player that's been in this community for a long time will remember that there were the month of, it was the month of the burglar. Well, unfortunately, doing it that way, what ended up happening is like, okay, we're going to put this class in the spotlight, and then all of a sudden everybody starts playing that class because it's the hot topic now. And then, well, nobody wants to take these other players now because they're playing this class that's their main, and that's what they love to play, but nobody's taking them, so they lose interest.
I have to be Mr. Harsh sometimes on this, which is that this is not a Lotro thing, it's a video game thing.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I encounter this sometimes in other games I play, and I choose to play with people who don't act like that. Yeah. So I'm not trying to say anything too harsh here, but I'm just saying, to some extent, there's only so much you can do to prevent kind of people who only accept things on the basis of min-maxing. You're never going to win there, right? So.
Yeah, and I see the comment of, the hunters with the barrage spam and stuff like that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
All right. So I do like what Kestrel says as well. Will there be any change for players to get a little more info on the reasoning behind certain changes? For example, if the red line champion isn't a priority, basically saying he or she feels it should be. I would not say that red line champion is not a priority. It's just that it's not being done here in update 22.2. As I tried to explain, update 22 is not all of the most important things we need to do. It is some of the important things we need to do. And so because say, for example, Champion Redline did not get the attention that you would like it to have gotten here in update 22.2 does not mean it's not a priority. A lot of this came down to how many people do we have to work on it, how many hours do they have in the day, how much stuff is it going to take to get this stuff done. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I would say that, for example, that is what, the reality of it. In terms of how to get more info behind the reasoning, keep an eye on these threads. I deliberately asked the systems designers, Vastin and Friendly Hat, to kind of step back for the first 12 hours. We wanted to get a neutral set of feedback that didn't get guided by us based on our responses. And we also, as you also know, I cracked down pretty hard on those threads in terms of commenting on other people's comments. I wasn't just trying to be a jerk there, but I really wanted to not have this thing veer off into a side discussion or veer off into a niche discussion based on a specific part of that feedback, and I wanted to get a wide breadth of high-quality feedback. And frankly, I think we were successful in that. We got some really good feedback from the community so far and are continuing to do so, in part, I think, because of these somewhat harsh rules that we put into place. But the reasoning is going to be happening here in the coming days as the systems designers get out of their meetings here today, start talking to the community and providing responses to that some of that. And you have seen some of that already. So, all right, I wanted to just quick move on to Guardian because we do have a bunch of classes here that we can talk about, and we can't maybe go to every change here.
Yeah.
But as you can see, Guardian has more going on than the Champion does. We've redesigned the Keen Blade and Red Line. And some of the release notes actually go into that reasoning as well. Like, for example, the reason for this redesign was because the prior implementation was complex and buggy, tough to debug. It was too server process intensive due to the way that bleeds are handled client and server side, and the DPS of the Redline Guardian was frankly too low to make it particularly functional for soloing or as a team DPS member. So we're stripping out a lot of that underlying complexity, hopefully keeping its favor and giving people a more effective rotation. Like I say, we kind of, I don't want to read all of this because we could take the next hour just reading
right.
text. But overall, we're seeing, again, overall skill damage for the Guardian increased substantially. Blue and yellow line seeing some benefit from this through the base skills. Red line seeing the bulk of the benefit. The tiered bleed concept is being eliminated. due to bugs and performance issues. That itself is a very significant change. The new version has 3 separate bleeds associated with sweeping cuts, thrust, and brutal strike. The primary skill rotation will revolve around keeping these up as efficiently as possible. Red line bleeds are stronger, but they will no longer benefit from the yellow line's radiate talent. Guard bleeds are no longer applied or renewed by crits, and some other things as well. So it's not just buffs, it's also nerfs. No, I'm sorry.
I feel you on that one, Pont, with the knockdown from Brutal Charge. Yeah, I'm going to miss that one. That's that was a good one.
I don't play a Guardian. I'm sorry. I really have no idea what most of this means.
I play one poorly.
Okay. All right. So, but this is an example of us not just, say, fixing current bugs, but trying to take a holistic look at the class and lay the groundwork for more comprehensive, sustainable changes over time. You know, if you just ask, say, players maybe, let's say, 3-4 months ago, you would say, you know, fix this particular aspect of bleeds or something like that. But instead, we're doing something more top-down on the Guardian. And that's also why this Bull Roarer feedback, if you can get onto Bull Roarer and provide that feedback, is exceptionally important right now, because getting our Guardian players to test out these changes in a real scenario rather than just, say, theory crafting or what have you is extremely, extremely important. And my camera just died.
Yes, it did.
I'm no longer available. I guess I have to shut up now. All right. Fine. Nobody needs to see me. All right, well, I guess really that's about all we can say. Let me see. Holistic bug. Yummy. That's why you changed your main. Yes, but you took Guardian Bleeds and buff back at Dol Amroth, and now you are putting some of it back, which is confusing. Sure, I can understand that. Not thrilled by the removal of Morale, Heal from Prey and the Weak, replacement with Power, or the Knockdown from Brutal Charge being removed either, but trying to work through it. So I would also say that this is, you know, in particular areas where there's like a big no, make sure that we hear that as well, because there is some opportunity to, you know, address that feedback.
One thing too, like realistically, I made this comment too in for any of you photographers that are out there. You know, it's sometimes easier to make a focus adjustment when you make a big change versus trying to make a real fine adjustment. So looking at some of these things, and people, I see some of the responses too where it's like, you know, why is this happening, or this seems like off. When you're making underlying changes too, like we did talk about with the champ, where you're making a damage increase across the board, well, you wouldn't probably want to make changes to, say, the red line, which is primarily DPS, and you're bringing the numbers all the way up, and you're changing the traits at the same time. That might not go over well. So if you do stuff like you're talking about with the Guardian, yes, playing how you play now, those things may not make sense, but once you figure things out, it may be better. It may not be, but sometimes looking at it that way of shifting the focus completely may help kind of focus what it actually needs to be. So just a thought out there.
All right, I think that's about all I'm going to mention on Guardian, because I don't know that I can provide any qualitative or quality comment beyond that. I will answer Darlena 1's question. Can we say a bit of information? What exactly is the perfect picnic in the instance finder on Bull Roarer? It has 3, 6, 12-man size, and I'm wondering if it's some instance. The answer to that is yes. It is one of our new seasonal instances that we'll be debuting here with the Summer Festival. You guys are already aware, because of the live stream and such, that we are doing a instanced version of one of the boss fights in the Rift, but we're also doing a second instance, and that is the perfect picnic. It's you know, maybe a little bit less as you might imagine. It's perhaps a little bit fluffier, having to do with picnics and such. But, yeah.
Druids actually brings up a really good point. We had mentioned this when I got in this morning, was that, you know, there are people that don't want to do Bull Roar because they don't want to see new stuff. This one is probably one that if you're concerned at all about your class or where it stands or anything like that, just reiterating it, this is the one you want to get in on. And any of the future change, like the big changes like this, is now is the time to make your voice heard. You know, I know people tend to stray away from the forums too. You know, there's plenty of ways to provide feedback. You know, I know that Cordovan looks at all those other things like Twitter, Facebook, comments, forum threads, all that stuff. So, and the bug reporting. Now is the time to get in and do it. If you feel that there's something that is not right with your class, they're making the changes now, so get in and be a part of it.
Man, my webcam might have actually died. I just tried plugging it back in and it said it malfunctioned.
I secretly unplugged it over here.
Right. All right, well, let me see if I've got a USB plug here. There we go. See if it's a plug issue or if it's a webcam issue. All right, I can plug in a USB webcam with my mind. All right, what am I doing here? Let's move on to the next class.
Everybody wants me to entertain them now?
Yeah, I need you to sing a song.
Oh, absolutely not. That's not going to happen.
All right, so I might as well go alphabetical here. Let's look at lore masters here first, or next rather, focusing largely on the red DPS line with simpler changes to the yellow line. The blue line has mostly been left alone. Quality of life upgrades, tone down the sheer number of buttons a lot while bringing up its damage, healing, and power restoration. Bringing up its damage somewhat, its healing up, and its power restoration down considerably from its current state of free power for everyone forever. So that's a little bit of a debuff to the class in terms of power restoration, but even at my level, I'm playing with I don't play a lore master, but I'm playing with a lore master, and power has basically become a non-issue completely thanks to the current lore master on live. So I think that there's going to, while it is a bit of a nerf, it's not going to completely kill anything. But we'll see, right? Otherwise, basically, like I say, it's mostly kind of redline stuff having to do with improving damage.
I do like the one for the lore master of removing the hasten skills and actually just applying it to staff sweep. That's pretty cool.
Oh, I got two of you. Wrong webcam. I could fill the screen with Bloodborne.
More blood. Big blood.
There we go. I'm back. Except my green screen is... You're seeing behind the curtain. The truth. There is actually a green screen.
You're going to get judged for the wrinkles.
I know. I should take care of the wrinkles, but I just don't care.
Hey, it works well enough.
It's fine. It doesn't matter. It's perfectly good.
I agree, though. One blood is enough. That is you're 100% not wrong.
Nice. Actually, where do I get this working? Okay. Chroma. There we go. I'm back. Hello, everybody. Did you miss me? No. All right. Let me check our chat now. The wrinkles, man. I know. So I actually could get a wallpaper steamer or something and steam it out, but as long as it works, why do I care, right? So, yeah. I think a lot of lore masters disliked being the power restore class. So although the existing power restore skills are too OP, it's not like more lore masters want to spend their raid time giving hunters power. And I think you're right there. Also, I would say that it is still going to be a class that can restore power to the group. It's just going to involve a little bit more trade-off and activity than just sort of...
Yeah, this is a little bit more old
instant
school.
Everybody all the time, yeah.
Yeah, this is a little bit more old school, having to draw and push a little bit more effectively.
Can I make sure that I see what Chromite wrote? Let me see what Chromite wrote. With the massive changes happened to classes, it would be nice and wise to allow people to re-choose legacies for free once the changes hit. Allow people to reclaim their Ash from the 3,500 Ash runes for people who spent so much effort in Ash for applying 2 runes on their legendary items.
You made a comment about that, right? With the runes?
We had. I had also talked to Vastin yesterday about this while I was making popcorn. But we're looking into that, but we don't really have anything we want to announce, and we're not committing to it right now. One of the issues we run into is that we're going to be doing a lot of changes over time. And in some cases, yes, that means you're going to have to, or choose to, or want to, do some re-gearing. And we just aren't in a position where we want to always be providing sort of, all right, all the things that were dependent on your particular choice now, since that choice is being changed, where it's up to us to make sure that you're fixed, as it were. So I appreciate what you're saying about re-choosing legacies once the changes hit, and we're not making an announcement either way on that, but I think we're largely leaning toward perhaps not allowing you to re-choose legacies, but we are doing some things with relics, I know, and Vastin in particular is looking into the idea of perhaps returning some level of Ash to allow people to kind of re-gear and do some of that work. So it's an unsettled question right now, but we hear you. It's just a matter of, once you start going down that road, it's pretty easy to never be able to leave it. You know what I mean? But that said, we also, in cases where people maybe spent real money on things, we want to take a hard look to see whether there is something we should do there and perhaps make a change. I see a lot of barrage talk. Hunters are Lotro's Uber. I assume you mean Uber taxi. They are, though. Oh, God, they are. They're the best. I love it. I have a hunter in my group right now, and it has made my life infinitely better. As far as I'm concerned, they could never do another point of damage again, and I'd still have them in my group. Granted, they wouldn't enjoy it very much, but I'd be fine with it. All right, so Lore Master, let's go to one of the big ones. That would be the Hunter. Hunter clearly is one of the more controversial and highly discussed changes that we're doing. We are aware of that. We knew we were going to basically be stepping in a minefield with the Hunter, but there are some things that we felt needed to be done with the Hunter anyway that we're going to be doing. And we also recognize that there are some long-standing things that could be improved on the Hunter as well. Hunter is, I've only been the community manager for Lotro for not quite 2 years now, but even when I started playing Lotro in 2010, Hunter was either completely OP or completely nerfed. And it seems like it's always been a very binary sort of situation in terms of the power level of Hunter in this game. Would you agree? Or am I totally off base here?
No comment.
No comment? You can call me out, man. It's fine. If you think I'm wrong, just let me know, I remember Hunter basically being the one button, I don't even have to look at the screen to be able to get through the game. And then we nerfed it pretty hard, so, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like they were in a pretty good spot. There's just some stuff that it seems a little excessive, but I think everybody just wants their class to be competitive, and when they're properly geared, they just want to feel like they're powerful. And anytime you swing the pendulum the other way, in any distance, it might just be a little bit of a shock to some people. And, and especially when they've done however much work they've done on that class, and then something changes to where they have to rework it. But, anybody that's been in an MMO for any amount of time, and really RPGs for that matter, knows that's kind of like par for the course. Things change, because if it just stays stagnant, then you really can't do anything new. And I think that's what's good to see, I know I saw a lot of responses just to the class changes as a whole for this first iteration.
Yeah.
Is wow, that's a lot more than I thought we were going to be seeing.
Yeah, right.
Because I remember the original comment was, hey, we're going to be looking at, like 3 to 5 things per class, and then as you start digging in, it's like, whoa, there's actually a lot more.
Yeah.
But
and really that came down to prioritization. We have long heard from the community that they want us to work on class balance.
Yeah.
And the timing of this now, someone on the forums had said, well, how could you do this during raid season or whatever? But I think the reality is now. I know, right? I don't have a permit. I've missed my permit. I hope no, but nonetheless, I think now is the time to get this stuff at least started on, and then done. Hopefully, let's say within a year or what have you. I think now's the time to do it. And because of that, plus the feedback we received from the community, we were able to take our systems folks and say, in some cases, drop what you're doing. This is what you'll be doing for the next couple of months.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy decision to make. It has a commercial and a business impact.
Sure.
But we felt, frankly, that the community had reached a point where the demand was great enough to justify doing that kind of
I know I was pretty vocal on that too. Was that whole stop what you're doing thing was, I know that was heard. And it was just, it's from my perspective as a player and a broadcaster and seeing what I hear from players, because honestly that's been the best part, is seeing other people that aren't on the same server, may not be playing at that time, and they're at work, and so getting to see what other people think outside of my little group, has been really cool. And the thing that really kind of swung it that way for me was that if this part wasn't done, it just makes all the further work that you guys want to do even harder. Because how does Pinion design a new dungeon based around the current mechanics that are fun and challenging for everybody, or do you put that on the back burner, fix all this stuff so that he has an easier job going forward, and saying, because, well, this is all balanced now, I don't have to worry about who are the damage classes that can participate in this. Well, now it's the way it's balanced out.
I have to admit, though, that's, even with all these changes, the idea of, are we ever going to be perfectly balanced? Man?
No.
If some video game developer actually manages to hit that and sustain it long term, they're going to be geniuses, The reality is, this is a big course correction that we need to do, but is certainly not going to be, the one and done that, in some cases, I'm sure our systems folks would love it to be. but All right, speaking of YouTube, though, someone had said, how's come I'm ignoring YouTube? I'm sorry about that. Let me get to some of your feedback. In particular, a lot of the YouTube comments were about hunters, so I've been saving it to there. Someone saying, basically, the barrage nerf is going to kill the hunter. You nerfed barrage spam, but pen shot spam covers most damage in redline. Redline solos, the survivability was great in raids, while the high DPS was awesome in solo play. Survivability is in blue, DPS is in red. Barrage changes in hunter sucks. It ruins low level in early game. Why the 20-second cooldown in every third shot? It makes no sense at all. Hunters have one job in raids, DPS. With the new nerfs, it will take a ton of DPS away from them. There's a lot to kind of go through there, but I would say hunters may have primarily a DPS role in raids, and I do think that is going to continue even after these changes are made. What may change, however, is perhaps their damage was in some cases a bit of an outlier, and so we are scaling it back a little bit, while also attempting to diversify what the hunters do. So rather than, okay, you have one role, and by the way, you also have one button. We want to provide a little bit more in terms of options for hunters and do that as well. Now, I will say this. Clearly, the change to Barrage is one of the most controversial changes we have seen so far. So whether we are listening to your feedback pretty significantly on it, and we'll see if any adjustments need to be made. What it is having a 3-shot limit enforced by a 20-second cooldown. So every 20 seconds, you're going to get 3 shots rather than basically 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, etc. That it is now. Hunter skills have been normalized to new general damage progressions. In some cases, this is a boost, and in some cases, this is a bit of a scale back. Hunter ally bleed damage bonus is being reduced from 150% to 50%. That also is, frankly, a DPS drop, but the DPS at 150% was just such an outlier that it really wasn't sustainable. Because as we're working on other DPS to boost DPSs of other classes, with that outlier there on the horizon, we would run into a situation of, okay, but it's still not as good as this. Okay, but it's still not as good as this. And frankly, it needed a little bit of nerf. However, the base bleed damage of all hunter skills has been increased by a similar or greater margin in most cases. So while the damage bonus has been reduced, the base damage has been increased in an attempt to hopefully even things out there a little bit. Otherwise, yes, I mean, I guess we're aware that people are of multiple opinions on the hunter, but we do have some people who are very used to playing their hunter a certain way in recent years and are not entirely happy with this system there. What do you think? You play a hunter, right?
Probably poorly as well. I mean, most of my time is spent on the champ, but you know, I have one at 115. He can do tier 2 stuff, so he's I don't know the like kind of more of the intricate side of things. You know, for me it's I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I'm a bad player because I just hit buttons that are on cooldown or off cooldown. So
yeah,
no, I try to look at things situationally based on what I need to do. But I can see where people are under the quote unquote one button hunter. Like, I get that. It's a little bit of an exaggeration of what's actually going on. It just feels like it is because that's what you're seeing. You know, any hunter that is in a group is typically going to be blue line because they're maximizing their DPS that way. And again, this could be one of those things where it's a pendulum swing. Yeah. You know, it's just like swing it back the other way a little bit to see, kind of like you said, like a course correction, and see how far do you have to go in the other direction to keep it competitive. Because I think that's where it needs to be, is that you don't want to be in a situation where, how often have you guys seen in World Chat, you know, looking for, you know, whatever particular instance, and they just want hunters and runekeepers, and you know, you don't see the Bergs in there, you don't see the champs in there, you don't see whatever in there, because they're not competitive in that space.
Right.
So there's part of that in there.
All right, so I do want to address a comment that I'm seeing in Twitch chat from Chromite and some other folks, basically saying no real hunter ever only just spammed Barrage. And you're right, I was exaggerating about the use of Barrage in the class. However, I think it was clearly a popular choice that was used frequently and did need some adjustment as part of this overall effort. So part of what's being done here with Hunter is to solidify the red line as the dominant group DPS trait line and adjust blue to be more solo-friendly, survivable, and a flexible trait line. It's not always the case that red is damage, blue is protection, yellow utility, but in general that is the largest category for most of our classes. And I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense to have I mean, if you want to make red line a more significant DPS line, how do you compete as a hunter with the current state of the blue line, right? And where would that end up if you were trying to make red line better than the current blue line? So, but I recognize that there's a lot of controversy there, and I do think actually at some point it would be good to have a more hunter-specific focused bit of feedback on that. So, all right. So I guess, like I say, we recognize what you're saying here, and we'll have to kind of see what's going Sorry, I can't get the name right. Have I heard about server issues? He had some reboot on Serana to fix it, but yesterday night we still have invisible walls blocking the path near Agarnaeth. We are continuing to look into that. Hopefully we will find a solution to that relatively soon. We are aware that the game environment has been a little deteriorated in recent weeks. One of the things we're going to be doing is, I haven't announced it yet just because I've been too busy. We're going to be starting to do weekly world restarts for Lotro. I think next Tuesday will be the first one. And that's hopefully just a short term, but we'll see, effort to improve the overall game environment. We do it for DDO. We've done it for DDO for a while, but we had not done it for Lotro. And we're going to start doing it for Lotro just while we continue to look into what exactly is going on here. I don't think we're going to ruin the Hunter. I don't think we will.
I don't think anybody on this team would want
Yeah.
a particular class to just be completely irrelevant.
Also, Irurin, I don't think Cordovan understands Hunter's law. It's okay, though. I trust the Lotro devs. Probably good advice. Yeah. I have played a little bit of a Hunter, but I've only played my Hunter to, I guess, level 25, so it's been low-level Hunter play. Okay, well, we're kind of actually, it's amazing how quickly we can fill an hour, huh?
Yes.
But we've got a few more changes here that I could make. I don't really think we should go into all the classes. We did, after all, talk about Hunters here, but we do have the Warden and the Minstrel. The Minstrel 2 is actually getting a pretty significant amount of feedback, or changes to it, rather. It is probably, outside of Hunter, the second most talked about set of class changes. It's also one of our largest set of class changes, as you can just see from the notes here. We're working on really all three of the lines, maybe a little less comprehensively, but there are changes to all three of the lines, focusing mainly on blue and yellow. They want to make buffing as a minstrel more streamlined, tweak their healing rotation, add a bunch of quality of life changes, add some survivability, and do some things like that. So, one of the things that is a little bit more controversial is that cooldowns are being reduced. There's a default duration of anthems of 3 minutes, and a few other things there as well. I guess I really don't want to go too much into that just because we're running low on time. But we've been getting a lot of feedback on that, and I would imagine we will be getting a lot more and responding to that feedback here in the coming days. And then finally we got the Warden, which is, let me see here,
a lot of ranged stuff in the Warden.
Yep. Scaled up ratings-based buffs to keep up with recent stat change. I grabbed the wrong thing. There we go. The blue line also now is a single target force taunt in the form of warning shot. The yellow line has had many of its buff lines updated, and you can really just kind of see the numbers. There's a few that have been decreased in potency, but increased in the debuff duration. And you can just kind of see straight up the numbers and the percentages right there. A lot of stuff here too, frankly. That's worth looking at. That's not all, though. I know we're just about out of time, but that's not all that we have on Bulwer. There is a couple other things as well. We do have the seasonal instances that you can take a look at. And then finally, we have a dev diary. Let's see if I can call that up real quick. We are starting to do some work on rejuvenating the older landscape areas. So, a fresh coat of paint. Oh, and I should sticky that thread too when I get a second. But, there we go. We are working on Breland, Arid Lewin, and some other areas too. Scenario is back on the team, and one of the things he did to kind of get himself re-ramped up on World Builder, which is like our internal building tool and things like that, is take a look at some of these old areas and do some work on it. So, for example, you can see a before and after. The before is top, after is the bottom, of some of the areas that we've added polish to with update 22.2. And we're going to be doing more of this sort of thing in the coming updates as well. You can see the old forest here is getting quite a bit of work done to it and what have you. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I know Druid's Fire in particular has spent a lot of time grabbing screenshots on that. We really appreciate that. But that is something that we have started to do, and we're going to be continuing to do in the future here, particularly looking at some of our older areas that most need it. Just taking a look at things. So Monstrous Filth, I can't really go... I don't have time to talk about all the PvMP stuff that PvMP players would like us to talk about. I will say that we are aware that this is going to mean changes to PvMP. And that is something we're going to have to address in the future. Clearly, as we're changing up a lot of the Freep side things, it's going to have an impact on PvMP balance, and that's something we are going to have to address in the future.
You know, that's something I can talk about, so I'm blue in the face.
Yeah, I think we actually will talk about PvMP later on in the day here today. I just don't know that we can really delve into that at this point, because if we wanted, we need to do this classwork. This classwork is going to have adjustments in both the regular game and PvMP.
Sure.
Historically, we have largely focused on the non-PvMP sections for the Freep side, and then tried to bring up creeps to match that. And I think to some extent that's what's going to happen here, but there may well be some specific changes that will need to be made in the PvMP environment as a result of this. Quick question from YouTube. Let's see if we got anything here. So instead of fixing weaker classes, their idea is to grind down and destroy every powerful class. Yep, that is our plan. No, that is not our plan. As a matter of fact, the goal is both. We want to buff classes that need it. We want to keep players that are happy with their classes happy. There are a few cases, though, where we, in order to do this kind of more comprehensive class balance, we do have to get rid of some of the outliers. And so there are a few nerfs in here, but overall we're hoping to be a majority of buffs rather than nerfs. And we're thinking pretty hard about those changes when we do feel we need to make a nerf, like with the one Hunter thing. And that's not a finalized thing yet as well. Can you send out a date and time when you talk about PvMP, because I want to hear it? Well, we get asked questions about PvMP virtually every week right here on Court of the Rings on twitch.tv/LotraStream, youtube.com/LordofTheRings/live, and facebook.com/Lotro. I'll be back next Friday. You'll be live on Sunday, correct, Bloodborne?
That is correct.
And what do you got in the works?
Oh, I got to bring up a lot of classes. I've got 6 left that are between 105 and 115 to bring up. And we've got if you guys are on Arkenstone, something that is starting to happen right now is that we're starting kind of a community raid group
cool.
with a few core people that we want to bring along. And then it's really kind of designed around creating kind of a low-pressure environment. Because look, everybody that is a hardcore raider started as somebody who's never raided before. And they got to that point at some point because they liked it, and then they just worked at it. I know there's a lot of players out there that are very hesitant to join raid groups because they don't want to feel, inadequate, or they don't want to feel, pressured to know every single thing that they're supposed to do at every single moment. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do on Arkenstone is on the Twitch channel. It will be broadcast every time we do it, which would ideally be a couple times a week once it's up and running completely. And so if you guys have characters on Arkenstone that you want to help with that, or if you're somebody that wants to participate in that, just reach out to me and we'll get you in the group. And that way people that may have never experienced the raids will get an opportunity to do that. And it's not just something that we're going to leave just with raids. I mean, there's opportunities for us to do Ettenmore's groups. There's opportunities for, you know, we talked about doing Throwback Thursdays where we go do old raids and stuff like that, or old dungeons, or hey, let's go get those old mounts that you never got a chance to get, like the Nimble Black Goat from Moria, stuff like that. Really just kind of drives a community engagement. I'm sorry that it's limited to Arkenstone, but I do have a full-time job and a kid, so they do need some attention too. But hopefully something like this can kind of spark those similar things on other servers too.
Awesome. And just a quick reminder, twitch.tv/Bloodborne, BLUDBORN. And give him a follow, support his channel, and you'll be back on Sunday night at 10:30 as well for Echoes in the Dark.
Correct.
Any kind of final thoughts before we call the show here?
Well, it is very nice to be here. Your hair is longer than I thought it was, and you were shorter than I remember.
Yeah. Well, I've shrunk over the years, right? So what I'm doing is I'm taking some of that height and channeling it into my hair, so it kind of...
Fair enough.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's great to be here, and kind of excited to talk to more of the team and see what we can do.
All right. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I'll be back next Friday at noon here for Court of the Rings. Till then, later. Stay tuned. We do have Corey Olson coming on in just a few minutes, and we may try to do a surprise, kind of a off-the-cuff stream later on today, running actual in-game content as well. If we can get to that, we will. So stay tuned on social media for that. Bye-bye.
See ya.